I guess we start by asking why would a dentist be interested in old trucks? And that started a long time ago when I was a little kid. I was always, like most little kids, I guess, fascinated by the big vehicles and the trucks, and I rode with the truckers as a little kid. And I suppose that, like many other kids, we were way ahead of our times. We had simulators, and they train the astronauts and everything now by simulation. Well, we all had our simulators then, and the simulator was an old parked Mack or auto car or one of the old big trucks. Sterlings perhaps, or a White, and as kids would sit in those and go through the gears, and every now and then you'd find a bigger truck that had 2 gear shifts and practice double clutching and this kind of stuff. And I guess if we were honest, we'd say some of us even supplied a little of the noise between those shifts. and that's basically how I got started in it. Then when I was in college, going to dental school, I wanted to work my way through school. I had to work somehow, and since I was fascinated with trucks, I thought that the appropriate thing to do would be to try and get jobs driving. So each summer I'd tell a little bit bigger lie and get on a little bit bigger piece of equipment. So I started off in the East working on dump trucks, construction trucks, for Camarco in Carmel, New York. And gee, I went from an EQ Mack the first week on to what was it, a 970 GMC 6-banger diesel, and that had a 5-speed box and 3-way auxiliary. And of course, the whole time I was running that, I was pretending I was a line driver and going through all the gears and doing the splits and that kind of stuff. So that's how I started in it. And then you know, they did the real trucking, I thought, out in the West. And since I was going to school, pre-dental and dental school at Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska, I thought it was appropriate that I'd get on the real stuff, the Kenworths and the Freightliners and that kind of thing. So in the mid-50s, early 50s and mid-50s, I started driving summers out of Omaha, and then later out of Denver, going to the West Coast, hauling meat and so forth, swinging beef on meat rails and so on from the packing plants in Omaha, Chicago, St. Louis, and so forth, out to the West Coast, and hauling produce back to the Denver, Colorado, and the Midwest. Well, it had to be about 15 years ago, and I found a W model in a gravel pit up in Kremling. I was taking my daughters to they were cheerleaders, and we were following the high school football teams, and in Colorado that means you put lots of miles on. It's not uncommon to go 200 miles for a high school football game. And I was driving the cheerleaders up through Kremling, and I saw about this much of the top of a cab of a truck in a gravel pit. And to my daughter's tremendous consternation, I slammed on the brakes and I said to a load of cheerleaders in the station wagon, "My God, that's a W model Mack." And they, of course, they couldn't believe it. And I pulled down into the gravel pit and I found this W model. And about 2 years later, I went up and made a deal with the guy to buy it. It had a beaver tail on it. Was hauling a loader, construction equipment, and I bought the truck from him. And the restoration was basically about a 12-year project. I didn't have the money to throw at it all at once. So little by little, year by year, I started going to the the American Truck Historical Society meetings. And each year the truck had a little more work done on it until finally we have it pretty well together. As far as what it has in it and so forth, it's an interesting one. It has the old 275 Cummins, an NHB. I think we call it an NHBS. Was the 275, a gear-driven blower, and extremely unique. And that was the hot rod of the 50s. Then Cummins after that did an NHRS, which was the 300 gear-driven blower. Now this was not the turbo. This was a Roots type supercharger. But if you had a 275 back in the 50s, you were really trucking. So that's what this has in it. It has a 5-speed main box, Mack main box, 3-speed Brownlight auxiliary transmission. So we have 15 forward speeds. And then with the 2 parts trucks here, the red one we got out of a up in Mills Brothers out of Newcastle, Wyoming. And then the tanker truck next to it came out of Meeker, Colorado. It was a state highway truck, and since it has a tank on it, I think we're going to restore that as a PIE tanker. We're going to have that as a great big red PIE tanker.